Nothing is wrong. That's the problem. Your life isn't collapsing. You're not in crisis. You're not at rock bottom. You're functioning. You wake up. You scroll. You respond. You handle things. You go to sleep. Nothing dramatic. Nothing catastrophic. And that's exactly why nothing changes. If something were broken, you'd react. If something hurt enough, you'd move. But mild discomfort, that's easy to tolerate. There's a strange psychological trap in stability. When pain is sharp, you act. When pain is dull, you adapt. Most people aren't trapped in failure. They're trapped in fine. Fine job. Fine relationship. Fine habits. Fine progress. Nothing urgent. Nothing unbearable. Just slightly misaligned. You tell yourself you're thinking, planning, preparing, but you're mostly maintaining. Maintenance feels productive. It feels responsible. But maintenance keeps the structure the same. Your brain loves equilibrium. It prefers predictable dissatisfaction over unpredictable growth, because growth threatens identity. If nothing is wrong, there's no reason to question who you are. And questioning who you are is uncomfortable, so you stay inside the acceptable version of your life. Not miserable enough to escape, not fulfilled enough to relax, somewhere in between. There's a quiet cost to that middle space. Years pass without resistance. No dramatic breakdown, no explosive transformation, just slow narrowing. Your world becomes smaller, but you don't notice. Because it happens gradually, you stop considering certain paths. Stop imagining certain versions of yourself. Stop exploring certain risks. Not because you decided to, but because you adjusted. Humans are incredibly good at adjusting. To noise, to stress, to boredom, to dissatisfaction. You can normalize almost anything if it doesn't scream. And most stagnation doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up as subtle restlessness. A thought at night. A feeling that something hasn't started yet. But the feeling isn't strong enough to disrupt your routine, so you ignore it. You tell yourself you're grateful. That things could be worse. That stability is a blessing. And it is. But stability without intention becomes sedation. You don't feel stuck. You feel occupied. There's a difference. Stuck feels urgent. Occupied feels safe. Your calendar is full. Your days are structured. Your responsibilities are real. But movement isn't the same as direction. You can be busy and still be slowly disappearing from the life you imagined. That's the uncomfortable part. Nothing dramatic has to go wrong for something meaningful to fade. Dreams don't always die loudly. Sometimes they just lose priority. And when that happens, you don't panic. You rationalize. Now isn't the right time. I'll revisit that later. Things are just busy. Later becomes a placeholder for courage. And because nothing is on fire, you let it slide. There's a concept in psychology about threshold activation. People don't act when something is slightly painful. They act when it crosses a certain internal threshold. But what if your life never crosses it? What if it stays just tolerable enough? You could spend decades in that space, not unhappy, not fulfilled, just functioning. And functioning can feel like success if you don't look too closely. The scariest version of regret isn't explosive failure, it's quiet continuity. Looking back and realizing nothing was ever bad enough to force you to change. So you didn't. You adapted. You endured. You maintained. You told yourself it was maturity. But sometimes it's just avoidance dressed as responsibility. Nothing is wrong. Your bills are paid. Your social media looks normal. Your days make sense. But deep down, there's a low-volume signal. Something asking, is this it? Not dramatically, not desperately, just calmly. And calm questions are easy to silence. You don't need chaos to transform. But you do need honesty. If nothing is wrong, you have to decide something is insufficient, and that decision is uncomfortable. Because now you can't blame circumstances. You can't blame crisis. You can't blame timing. You have to admit you want something different. And wanting something different creates tension. Tension with your current identity. Tension with expectations. Tension with comfort. That's why most people wait for something to break. It gives them permission. Permission to pivot. Permission to leave. Permission to change. But if nothing breaks, will you still move? Or will you stay because it's acceptable? Nothing is wrong. That's the problem. Because if something were wrong, you'd be forced to confront it. Now the only thing forcing you is awareness. And awareness doesn't shout. It waits. Quietly. So ask yourself, are you stable? Or are you sedated? Silence. Nothing is wrong. And time is still moving.